You back away from where your Corvette was parked and you see some fluid on the ground. Based upon its location, you can tell it's from underneath of where the front end of your C5 was parked. It doesn't look or feel slippery like oil or transmission fluid. It's different. It's a little watery and it's orange. Is it from your C5, or hopefully is it from someone else who parked there earlier in the day? You think to yourself, how do I know for sure if my C5 has a coolant leak or not? Thoughts of having to make an appointment with your mechanic dance through your head. And of course, how much is this going to cost me? Stop! You can do this. You can absolutely diagnose whether or not your C5 has a coolant leak or not. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do it next.
Toys for life.
To do this job correctly and efficiently, you're going to need a cooling system pressure checker and an adapter to connect to the C5's coolant reservoir. I'll be sure to leave links to both of these in the description below, but most likely you can borrow these from your local auto parts store. So with these two simple tools, you'll be able to confirm if you have a leak or not, and if you do have a leak, you're going to need a floor jack or a set of ramps so you can get your C5 up in the air a little bit, crawl under it, and confirm where the coolant's leaking from. And the cool thing is you'll be able to use the same technique on your other cars as well, so you'll be able to impress your wife the next time she has a leak. Unless, of course, she has a Tesla.
Dude, it's so freaking fast. Like, my brain still feels scrambled.
The C5 Corvette and just about any GM vehicle I've worked on has what's called a closed system, meaning that at all times the radiator and the engine block and everything on this side are always 100% full of coolant with no air in the system. As it expands and contracts the liquid, it goes into the surge tank, and that does have air at the top of the surge tank. Now this is important because air contains oxygen, and if a system had oxygen in it, that's more likely to cause corrosion and other sort of reactions with aluminum and copper and brass and whatever other sorts of metals it might come into contact with. So by design, the air that is allowed at the top portion of the surge tank doesn't react with the plastic at all, so it's good to go. So the radiator cap on the C5 Corvette is effectively on top of the surge tank, and it's got a 15 pound per square inch rating. What that means is when it's hot as it can get, it'll hold 15 pounds of pressure before it starts venting pressure out. And that's a good thing because coolant at 15 pounds of pressure will take another 45 degrees of heat or so, and that'll keep your C5 happy in the middle of summer. One last thing before we get started. As mentioned, the surge tank is made out of plastic, so try not to lean on it or put any pressure on it because you might crack it. Now let's go ahead and start the pressure test. Making sure the coolant is not hot, remove the cap on the surge tank carefully. If it's hot and under pressure, it's possible you could get sprayed with hot coolant and get burnt, so if in doubt, wait. Next, coat the O-ring adapter with a little coolant from the surge tank if possible, and install onto the surge tank hand tight. Grab the pressure checker and install it onto the adapter and pump the system up to 15 pounds per square inch. Then take a look at your watch and give it 15 minutes to be sure that it holds pressure. Luckily for me, my pressure held and didn't drop, so I'm good to go. Now, if yours started to drop pressure immediately, go ahead and let a little coolant leak out and then release the pressure. There's no sense in letting too much of it leak all over the place. Now it's time to go ahead and get the ramps and the creeper and the flashlight and start the investigation. The most common area of failure is probably the water pump. When the seal fails, it starts to seep out and it runs down the water pump and starts getting all over your accessory belts. Then you've got the variety of hoses that can leak, especially where there's a hose clamp. And here's a diagram that shows all of the hoses. And as you can see, there's a bunch of them. My goodness. Another area that could be leaking would be your passenger side floor onto the ground. And that could be your heater core leaking, because if that leaks, there's kind of a drain tube that goes down there by the passenger side floor. and then exits the vehicle. So hopefully it's not that. Probably the worst possible situation is when you know you've got a leak, but you can't find the coolant. Where's it going? In that case, you might have a head gasket leak and the coolant is getting pushed past the head gasket into the crankcase, giving you a coolant oil mix, which is not a good combination. If it's run like that for any length of time, if you pull the dipstick, it's going to look like a kind of a light brown chocolate milkshake, and that's a bad deal. So guys, I hope you found this video informative. If you did, please hit the thumbs up. If you haven't already, consider subscribing. But most importantly, thanks for watching.